I wanted to write a book for normal people. In that, most books about science and technology are written by geeks for geeks. And I say that being a geek and having a lot of respect for geeks, and I read those books. But, my feeling was that the human genome has been sequenced, and this stuff is happening to the climate, and the internet is going to be connected to all sorts of devices, and that has massive implications for everybody. And so I don't care whether you're scientifically minded or not, gay or straight, religious or atheist, we have sequenced the human genome, and it means something for your children. But there wasn't a book that my mum could read that would explain that without it being trivial. So I shamelessly nicked sort of a Bill Bryson, Michael Palin-esque style to go on a kind of a comedic tour around the world. It just so happened that I ended up talking to a very bearded man at Harvard Medical School who just happened to be the head of genetics. I went diving with the president of the Maldives to talk about climate change. So you get all the comedy, fish out of water, ordinary bloke going, oh, what's going on? But actually underneath it all, you get quite a nice primer on some of the technologies that will shape the next 20 or 30 years. So it was kind of a desire to bridge that gap, really. Well, I've always been fascinated by succinctness. And, comedy, for instance, when it's most funny, it's its most true. And often, strangely, it's its most succinct. It's that one line or those couple of lines that absolutely kill you, and you're laughing away. Somebody can say something about your relationship that you've been trying to say to your partner for the last 14 years. You haven't been able to find the words. They've said it on stage in 2 sentences, nailed it. She's laughing, I'm laughing, and you go, hang on. And similarly with music, I used to be a musician. I was always fascinated by the ability of Stevie Wonder to start playing the riff from Superstition. Not that he did it for me personally, like on the record, he didn't come round. But that riff could suddenly make me feel good. And how is that? So what is that ability to encode things with emotion? Because if you can use emotion, humour, art, culture in the right ways, you can use those skills to tell stories about science, technology, politics that are equally as engaging as the romance. And I thought that was worth doing. I don't think that you don't sell the future. You say the future's up for grabs, grab hold. If you don't know what's coming, you can't be awake at the wheel to a certain extent. And let me rephrase that. You can't really predict the future because the future's yet to be made. But if you're not aware of what's happening around you, you don't have much chance to get your hand on that steering wheel and make it. And so all the technologies we have are double-edged swords. You can use synthetic biology to make new kinds of fuel and new kinds of medicine, and you can also use it to make new kinds of pathogens. The thing is, human beings are a technological species. Whether we like it or not, that's what defines us. There isn't a dog from a doggy bookstore with a doggy camera interviewing a doggy author, in a doggy theatre, in somewhere else, in Gloucester right now. I mean, there might be, but they're keeping it very quiet. So the thing that defines us as a species, whether we like it or not, is technology and our use of it. And therefore, once you realise that, I think you have to go, okay, well, that's not a threat to our human nature, it's an expression of it. But that doesn't mean we don't have huge ethical questions to answer about how we guide that responsibly. But I don't think you'll ever guide it in any direction if you just kind of throw your hands up and go, I don't want to think about it, or we have to stop it. Neither of those things work for me. I think the human race is kind of a co-inspirational network. It's what we do together. No one person can do anything without other people. Even if you've got the world's greatest scientific researcher, and they are a forward-thinking genius, there's a whole bunch of people working for them. The most important people in my book were the personal assistants to the people I needed to talk to. Without them, believe me, the whole world falls completely apart. Without personal assistants, there is no MIT, there is no Harvard. Oxford disappears into a screaming hole in the ground. What I really am is a possibilist. I'm saying, the current narrative of the future is it's all going to be rubbish, pretty much. I mean, you come out the womb in this country and they go, bad move. It's what are you doing that for? And just to remind you how terrible it's going to be, here's the Daily Mail. It's going to be awful from here on in. Climate change, economic meltdown, the generation below you are feral on drugs, trying to steal from you. You can't trust your doctor, your neighbour, what you eat. That's the standard narrative, and there are lots of justifications for that. There are things that are wrong, but if the only vision of the future you see is a terrible one, that's what you'll get. And there are actually lots of other really great things we can do. We can solve the climate crisis. We can deal with the energy crisis. We can pull people out of poverty, and we've done some amazing things. And so it's about having a balance, because only then will you get something in the middle. But if you just believe the world's going to end up as a complete toilet, well, it'll end up as a complete toilet. It's like going to a job interview thinking you're not going to get it. Guess what? You won't. If we go into the future thinking it's going to be dreadful, then that's what we'll get. And part of my job is to say that is entirely possible. But can we put another idea on the table? Because then we might actually demand that a bit more, fight for it, and we might end up with something a bit better. I think the optimistic view always wins to a certain extent. I mean, when I talk about optimism, I don't mean blind optimism. Wishful thinkers I have really no time for. That's just a recipe for kind of apathy and denial that's actually really tedious and naive. It'll be all right in the end. Well, it may not be. You've got to get in there and be involved. So my view of optimism is optimism of ambition. Martin Luther King didn't stand on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial and say, I have a plan, right? He said, I have a dream. He said, things can be better. Now, we haven't eradicated racism, but I would suggest we're a lot further on because of his ability to articulate a future that looks better. All his speeches are about, I've been to the mountaintop, I've seen it. I have a dream. I can see this future. So being able to imagine it, but then tying that to our best critical and creative skills. So, work your have good bold dreams and then work your nuts off trying to do something about it. This is not new, right? But it's a bit outside of culture at the moment. The default reaction is cynicism, and I say that myself. My default reaction to most things is cynicism, and I have to stop myself because that's really easy. Cynicism is a bit like smoking. It may look cool, but it's really bad for you, and it's bad for the person standing next to you. So, what I have found out is that people are actually very hungry for an optimism of ambition, as long as you give them something to do. If you just say, there's all this great stuff going on, or it's all going to be terrible, and you don't give them any levers on the future, you don't give them something to grab hold of and say, well, where's my hand on the steering wheel? Then you've sort of disenfranchised them. So I now run this thing called the League of Pragmatic Optimists, which is a club for people who want to make the world better, and actually do projects.
So it's participatory. The future is yours if you want it. So.
The future's up for grabs, grab hold, and it's up for grabs in a way it hasn't been for a very long time. With what's happening with technology now, particularly nanotechnology and biotechnology and the digital revolution that we've all just lived through, your ability to shape the future is larger than it's ever been, and yet we seem to feel like our most disempowered, and I challenge that. One of the reasons I set up the League of Pragmatic Optimists is because people come up to me after reading the book and go, Mark, that's great. I suddenly realised that the future needn't be a disaster, and that's actually been very helpful to me. What should I do? And I go, well, I'm an author, I'm not Jesus, I'm not going to tell you what to do. So. But there are plenty of things you can do, and one of them has come to the League of Pragmatic Optimists. But there are now lots of people doing stuff that we used to expect politicians or the state to do for us, and now we're realising through technology we can actually do it ourselves. People taking their towns off grid, or working to re-envision how healthcare will work in their community. So there are actually lots of opportunities to get involved. We've been told by industrialism that you can't get involved outside anything other than the job you do. You're very much defined by the whole thing. What do you do? As if your job title defines you. It's ridiculous. So when people say to me, "What do you do?" I go, "What? All of it?" I do lots of things, and you should do lots of things. And now your ability to find other people to help you take your town off grid, improve healthcare in your local area, challenge legal precedents or whatever is extraordinary, and I think people are beginning to wake up to that now. As Douglas Adams said, trying to get a film made in Hollywood is like having a series of people come into a room and grill a steak by breathing over it. My experience is similar, except they also appear to urinate on the steak. So there is a rumour, and yes, we have got some very interesting and big names attached to it. I hope it will happen. I'm a pragmatic optimist, so yes, let's say yes, but it won't be in cinemas soon. Let's put it that way.